What's going on, everybody? The word Nazi used to mean something. Now it's a campaign slogan. If you say it enough, push hard enough, suddenly it's everywhere. Everybody's using it to describe certain groups of people. But that's where it breaks down. And the same people that have been throwing that label around, that insult around, are now backing a guy that they would absolutely never tolerate if the roles were reversed. So either they don't believe what they're saying or they don't care. And neither one is a good answer, and both are probably true.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God is the standard and masculinity is not toxic. Today is Tuesday, May 5th, 2026, the year of our Lord 2026. It is Cinco de Mayo and Taco Tuesday. So that is going to make for some fun times today for some people. Unfortunately, we haven't discovered any great taco places here in Arkansas, but we're looking. But we have a lot to get into today. And I came across a couple of things this morning that I'm going to try and get into. They do tie in the topic I already had prepared. But these stories stood out, so I want to try and get those in a bit later when the topics actually come up. But before we get into everything we get into, please do me a favor and help us out. Like, subscribe, share the channel, share the show. That is how we break out of the tech tyrants' algorithm grip. And They made noises that wasn't going to happen, but here we are. We are still growing. Thank you for that. We're still growing, but every like, every share, every comment, all of that helps us out tremendously because we want to make sure that we get the message out to the people who need to hear it. And also, this show is on the SHR Media channel, but it's also on my individual channel. Same show, same briefing, same topics, same time. But we are closing in on 1,000 subscribers over there. So I would really appreciate it if you could help me out and help me get over that hump over there as well. The last time I looked, we were at 958. So 1,000 is just around the corner. So please do me a favor and help me push past 1,000. All right. Now let's get after it. When Nazi comparisons became normal political discourse, they didn't just inflame tensions and shut down debate, but they justified escalation. And We don't know the circumstances around the gunfire that took place yesterday outside of the White House, or about a mile away from the White House. We don't have any details yet, so we don't know if this was another silly attempt to try and take the president out, or if it was just a thug carrying a gun that shouldn't have been carrying a gun in DC. We don't know. But there is a strong likelihood that it is. But anyway, for years, for decades, they've been calling conservatives in general Nazis. They called Bush II a Nazi. They've been calling conservatives Nazis for a long time. And then Trump was literally Hitler, literally worse than Hitler. And that somehow was fringe. They would dismiss that. That's not what everyone thinks. Well, we now know that that is the base. The base of the leftists believe that. They don't whisper it. It's not something that you only hear in elite cocktail parties. They say it loud with their whole chest on camera, on CNN, BS Now, and all the rest of the outlets, and all of the podcasters as well. All the left-wing podcasters, obviously. And you don't engage in rhetoric like that. You don't call somebody Hitler if you're not prepared to treat them like Hitler. And there is a candidate, Mallory McMorrow. I believe she's a candidate in Michigan. And she was on, I believe this is Manu Raju. She was on his show, and he asked her point blank, well, you know what, let me just let you hear this for yourself. Maybe. Are we having the same issues we had on Saturday? This is amazing. All right, check this out.
Nazi Germany and what's happening under the Trump administration.
Yeah, I do. It is deeply concerning that we see an authoritarian slide, and as we talked about earlier, dividing people against each other to convince people that if you're not doing well economically, it's somebody else's fault.
This has been the left's message for as long as I can remember. This is the whole income inequality nonsense. You're doing bad because we're not taxing the rich enough. Every accusation from these lunatics is a confession. This is a prime example of, it's a textbook example of projection.
Incredibly dangerous place for us to be in. I don't think that a lot of people would argue that there are shades of authoritarianism here that we need to be deeply concerned about.
Just to follow up on that question.
Oh my goodness. These people are absolute lunatics. Absolute lunatics. Every leftist who has ever run for office in recent memory, and even not so recent memory, has tried to frame their opponents on the right the same way. They have called us Nazis. They have called us authoritarians. Meanwhile, we only have to go back a few years to remember they were the ones who said you couldn't go back to work unless you got the COVID jab. They were the ones who said you had to wear a mask if you wanted to be out in public. They're the ones who said if you wanted to go out on the beach, you would be arrested. And we saw it on camera in California. But somehow conservatives are the authoritarians. It's to the point now where they will claim with a straight face that they are the only ones standing between us and the death of democracy. Yes, so this is a republic, I know, but those are the words they use. Details, I guess. So you have Michigan Senate candidate Mallory McMorrow saying that. And meanwhile, in Maine, Graham Plattner is the presumptive nominee for their Senate seat. And when you look at that, and when you look at his history, all the concerns, quote unquote concerns that they have about extremism, how the conservatives are authoritarians, how the conservatives want to take away everybody's rights and all this other nonsense. Meanwhile, this guy is sporting, he's had it covered up, but he had it covered up with another problematic tattoo that nobody really wants to talk about. I mentioned it before. That's another story we won't get into right now, but this guy has a Nazi tattoo. He has the SS death's head tattoo, the Totenkopf. Unbelievable. This is no longer about disagreement. This is no longer about policy disputes. This is about redefining their opponents as an existential threat. Because if someone is Hitler, then compromise isn't just wrong, it's immoral. And then stopping that person or those people becomes a moral obligation. This is not something new. We've seen this before. They label the opponent as dangerous, illegitimate, evil, comparing opponents to the worst of history's monsters. The political climate right now rewards rage bait, not restraint. And when you say someone is wrong in their beliefs, when you say that they're wrong, that their policies are wrong, that doesn't mobilize people. And I think despite the fact that people like me and others do call leftists communists and all the rest of it, we don't say that they're literally Stalin or literally Lenin, but that their policies are in line with those figures. And that doesn't mobilize people. And that's probably a good reason why historically Republicans don't show up to the polls in midterm elections, and why even during the general elections, the turnout is too close for comfort. But when they, on the other side, call people Hitler and Nazis and white supremacists and all the rest of it, that activates their base's fear and urgency and gives them some semblance of what their idea of moral clarity is, which is really immoral, but that's a whole other story. And this is where the left's complete incoherence shows up. I have long said that the left's philosophy, the left's approach, everything that they say and do doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. It's completely incoherent on all levels. Because the same movement that calls Trump Hitler is backing Graham Plattner, who is, if he's not a literal Nazi, he has the symbolism tattooed on his body. And some of the things that he has said would lead one to believe that. And when you look at that, that tells you that the standard is not principle. The standard for them is utility. The standard for them is political expediency. Whatever it is that gets them the win, that's the standard. Now, if Nazi is the line, if Nazi is the term you keep invoking, then that should be a line that you just don't cross, right? But yet, they're endorsing this guy, Graham Plattner. Let's, I mentioned him a few times now, and let's just take a look at a listen to some of his, the Senate Republicans, they put out a commercial, an ad against Graham Plattner. And when I saw this on one hand, it's hilarious. On the other hand, when you hear what the things that he's saying, it's like, how are they possibly backing this guy? So let's go ahead and get into this.
And now for a dramatic reading of Graham Plattner's Reddit comments.
Holy how about people just take some responsibility for themselves and not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to? Rape is a real thing. If you're so worried about it to buy Kevlar underwear, you think you might not get blacked out up around people you aren't comfortable with. Why don't black people tip? I work as a bartender and it always amazes me how solid this stereotype is. Living in white rural America, I'm afraid to tell you they actually are. I got older and became a communist. Still got the guns though. I don't trust the fascists to act politely. I did used to love America, or at least the idea of it. These days I'm pretty disgusted by it all. Feel free to back it up with facts. This was the gayest, not in a fun dick-sucking way, thing I've ever seen.
This has been a dramatic reading of Graham Plattner's Reddit comments.
That is the guy. That is the guy that they are endorsing to be the next senator in Maine. So we have the visual symbolism of him wearing Nazi tattoos, Nazi imagery. We also have this. This is just more incoherence from the left. Now, on the bottom, obviously you see Elon Musk when he was giving his greeting to the to the crowd. And now you have Graham Plattner. And there are plenty of other examples of all of this. But the left went absolutely nuts when Elon Musk did this. And the silence has been thunderous when it comes to this. Now, he was probably just waving to the crowd, but we can say that and understand that that's probably what was going on. But where is that standard from the left? Because we know exactly what the context was with Elon Musk, but they wouldn't let that go for a week. And they wouldn't even mention that. And like I said, we can go through all of the different examples of when people were doing this and accusing conservatives of giving the Nazi salute and all that. This is the kind of thing that, well, and I just showed you the example of Elon Musk. This is the kind of thing that somebody who is not on their side, not saying that Elon Musk is a conservative, but just in general, if somebody is not towing the communist Democrat line and they do something like this, they don't survive politically. They don't survive in the public sphere. Can you imagine if there was a conservative whose Reddit posts and social media posts read like what we just heard from Plattner? That person would never be heard from in polite society again. Imagine if any of I don't know, pick a conservative, not even a conservative. Let's just say Tim Pool. Let's say Glenn Beck. Anybody who's not a leftist. If any of their social media posts had read like that, what do you think the chances are that they would survive that in the public sphere? They wouldn't. This is why their standards, double that they are incoherent and don't stand up. They collapse. And this is to bring it back to the justification piece. If President Trump is literally Hitler and an existential threat to our democracy, republic, what's justified to stop him? What's justified? What's a step too far? You don't negotiate with Hitler. History has shown us that. You don't negotiate with Hitler. So that's where it leads. You don't negotiate. You eliminate the threat, which is what we've seen attempted so many times. If you constantly throw that word around and then ignore the implications when it's inconvenient, that's not just weakening language. That's not just weakening your position. You've given away the game at that point. And you have to If Nazi is your line, if Nazi is your red line, then you have to prove it. You have to prove it or it means nothing. And what they've proven with their endorsement of this guy is that it means nothing. It's a means to an end. The word is a means to an end. Scripture is clear about the power of language, the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21 says, "From the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." They have been saying for, as I said, ever, that we're all Nazis. So what do you think the natural progression is? It's once they successfully eliminate Trump, who's next? This is not me defending Trump, although I do defend him on certain things. And on some things, I have major criticisms of. So it's not about defending Trump. It's about recognizing when this rhetoric crosses the line. And does the line even exist if they're going to endorse someone who embodies the very thing that they claim to hate in us? So, as I always say at the end of the show, keep your head on a swivel. Because when everything is Hitler, the only thing left is what people feel justified in doing about it. All right, let's. I got a lot more to get to. We're going to get into the Islamic takeover of the West, and we're going to do that after the break. But first, I want to get a word in from our sponsor, and our sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. Midterms are around the corner, and your vote matters. And so does your budget, obviously. That's why we switched to Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They actively support pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom causes with every dollar that you spend with them. So right now you can get a free month of service at Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Jackson or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Jackson and make every call, every text, every month count. Go to patriotmobile.com/Jackson. Switch to patriotmobile.com today. All right, so if you've been following this show for any length of time, you know that I have been all over this Islamic takeover madness. And the left will say that there's no such thing as an Islamic takeover. Piers Morgan just said to Glenn Beck the other day that only 5 or 6% of his country are Muslims, and he doesn't see what everyone else seems to see. But it's there. He just doesn't want to see it. Or he's such an elite, which obviously is probably true, that it just doesn't touch him. But what starts as cultural accommodation, and it's progressed, it's metastasized in Europe, and it's coming here, and people are just letting it happen. They say it's compassion. They say it's tolerance, whatever word you want to use. But now it's conflict. People here in America say it's outreach, it's religious freedom, whatever. It's the same script, just a different chapter. And this is the trajectory that they are on, and it's intentional. Now, there are some in Europe, just like there are some here in the United States, but there are some in Europe who are railing against it. And one of them is the leader of a youth movement in Sweden by the name of, what's her name? Danielle Vesterberg. And this is her. I'm not going to play the video. It's in Swedish. And this particular video is captioned in Arabic because obviously the Muslims hate her. But she's been vilified over there in certain circles because they say that it's fringe. Again, that word fringe. They say that it's not really an issue. But her sentiment, and she has said that Islam has no place in Sweden, and she will fight to demolish every radical mosque illegal immigration has brought to them. It's a foreign culture that is not compatible with Swedish values. That sounds awfully familiar. And of course, she's right. Islam is completely incompatible with the West. And a lot of times you say that and it falls on deaf ears. People hear that and tune it out. And when you're me here talking to you, we can say that and we understand it. If you're actually talking to a Muslim, what we're going to have to do is actually come at it from a biblical authoritative perspective, because they won't respect it otherwise. They'll just brush it off and move on like they always do. But getting back to the point here, this type of pressure, upward pressure that's happening because citizens are starting to see the damage that Islam does. It's going to come to a head, and hopefully when it does, it's not too late. Islam is only 6% of the population in the UK, but they have a lot of power and influence because they have been allowed to hold seats in parliament and become mayors of major cities. And that's something that we're seeing here in this country. Mamdani, mayor of New York, a city of 9/11. But getting back to Europe for a second, There was just recently a horrific attack by a Muslim migrant in Barcelona, and a young woman is dead, and another man is fighting for his life as Spain is set to legalize 500,000 illegal aliens. And he screamed, Allahu Akbar, stabbed a girl to death 7 times in broad daylight in Spain. And there are so many other stories of just senseless violence by these people. A man was stabbed multiple times, again in broad daylight. 5 attacks in 24 hours in Spain by illegal alien invaders. I'm really, and I mentioned this before on another show about how Spain is about to legalize these people. It makes no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense to me. If somebody can make it make sense, I would absolutely love to hear it. But the only reason I see for allowing this to happen is you hate your citizens. You hate your citizens and you embrace the eventual Islamic takeover that's coming. There is no other explanation. And again, if there is another one, please let me know what it is, because it escapes me. And here's the thing, it didn't happen overnight. People in Europe didn't wake up, and in this country, for that matter, didn't wake up and suddenly see 50 million or ever how many million Muslims imposing their will. It happened gradually. It happened, and this is their tactic. They show up, they pretend to be accommodating, they pretend to go along until more come and they have more babies. And then they demand to be included. And then the next wave happens, and then they demand accommodation. It's orchestrated. It is a plan. And if you think, and this is a clip I've played before, but if you think that it's not something that they plan, if you don't believe what I'm saying, let me let you hear it in their own words. And this is an Islamic scholar. He's not just some random Muslim off the street. He's a well-known Islamic scholar. And this is what he has to say.
We are the messengers of the messenger. We are the representative of this deen of Islam. We have to be the solution. The future is ours. Every ideal nightmare of a Muslim Europe will come true.
He said with a smile.
They can be as mad as they want. I don't care. America will be a Muslim country. Russia will be a Muslim country. Islam will enter every house. We have to be a part of that change. We have to be a part of that da'wah. We have to be a part of those ghuraba who stand firm on our aqeedah and our practice and our deen and never, ever apologize. We're unapologetic. Never, ever compromise. We're uncompromising.
There it is. And I mean, when I was looking for clips of imams claiming that Islam was going to take over, I mean, I had so many to pick from. I picked this one because I've seen it before. They're not quiet about it. He just said they're not apologetic. There's another one. This guy, he's actually in Minnesota. And he has said in this clip, well, there's two that I'm going to show you. He has said in this clip, or in one of these clips, that Americans need to be scared because they're going to replace us. Let's go ahead and listen to this guy. This is another one. He's an imam in Minnesota.
Now that the people of America are standing for you, will you share with them the light and the beauty and the majesty of Islam, or will you stay in hiding? Tell the young people to continue to study, to prepare themselves to become the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, to become the mayor, the police chief, the leaders of Congress, and those that were born in America. Prepare yourself to be America's next president. Share with the people of Minnesota the words of the Quran.
He wants, well, and they all want an Islamic president. I contend we already had one in Barack Obama. Probably not the best one when you think about it, but I still believe he is. You don't say that the Muslim call to prayer is the most beautiful sound you've ever heard if you're not a Muslim. And change my mind. But here's another clip from that guy. It's the same. It's the same event, but I didn't want to play the whole thing because it's entirely too long. But here's another one.
We just elected a Muslim to be the mayor of New York. That's the home of 9/11. And those that are in opposition to Islam, they're watching the growth and the development of the Muslim community, and it scares them. You know why? Not because you're a threat. No.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Oh, they think you're about to replace those of privilege of the days of old. They see the Muslims as their replacement. And to be honest with you, we are their replacement. We are, as they would say, the new kids on the block. And this is our moment.
So there you go. There you go. In their own words. They are intent. Their goal is to take over. Their goal is a worldwide caliphate. Their goal is to convert or kill all the infidels. And yeah, they have the jizya, the tax for people who don't want to convert. But they will tax you until you can't pay, and then you either have to convert or die. This is their MO. It follows a pattern where they want to they want you to be respectful, and they feign respect on the flip side, but then they want, as I said, inclusion, and they use our religious freedoms against us to be inclusive. And then once they gain a foothold, like we're seeing in Europe, you can't question it. Then people like Piers Morgan say it's not a big deal. And then once you do question it, then you're the problem, like Tommy Robinson, who Piers Morgan hates. Or people like us in this country, Amy Meck and Laura Loomer, who are doing just fantastic work in this regard. Say what you want about Laura Loomer. You may have your problems with her. I know she's said and done some things that I have a problem with, but when it comes to this particular subject, her and Amy Meck are all over it, and they're doing great work. I get a lot because, and here's the thing with that. A lot of the things that I talk about, you can't find on any mainstream outlet because they won't talk about it. And then they label Amy Meck's reporting as extreme. They label it as well, whatever they want to call it. They just dismiss it as fringe. There's another thing going on here in this country. Well, it's going on all over the country. To bring it back home, Europe is, except for people like the woman in Sweden and some other isolated people in other countries, Europe is pretty much lost. Europe is pretty much lost. They're trying that here in this country. And I've talked about the things that are going on in Houston and basically all over Texas, because they know that Texas, if they can get Texas to fall, that's the game. That's the ball game. But there is actually not even Texas. There's one in New York. There's in Houston, they have a recruiting video that I might get to here in a little bit that is done in Arabic to recruit Muslim police officers. That's going to be a disaster. But in Suffolk County, New York, there is the police in Suffolk County, New York are bowing down to Islam. There was some graffiti outside of a mosque on some stop signs. Somebody spray painted on these stop signs, stop, or it said stop, and then somebody spray painted underneath Islam in front of this mosque. And all of a sudden, that's a hate crime. And to the point where the chief of police in Suffolk County showed up at a mosque pledging their complete and total effort to find who did it. Let's listen to this. We're not going to play the whole thing. This whole thing is about 3.5 minutes long, but you'll get the gist of it.
को जो स्टॉप साइन नज़र आ रहा है, इस एरिया में 9 मुख्तलिफ स्टॉप साइंस पर कम्युनिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के ज़रिए न्यूयॉर्क सफोक काउंटी की जो पुलिस हुकाम है और आज नमाज जुमा के मौके पर सफोक काउंटी की डियर पार्क मस्जिद में
And I have the honor of being the chief of department for the Suffolk County Police Department. And I want you to look at me not only as the chief of department, I am your chief of department. The Suffolk County Police Department works for every resident in this county, including you. And at this time, we work especially for you. I'm here to...
Especially? How about just enforce the laws? That's your job.
convey directly from the police commissioner's lips to me this morning, the current investigation that we're conducting into the disgusting acts that occurred around this facility, this mosque.
Some graffiti that says "Stop Islam." That rises to this level. That gets the police chief involved. Come on.
Is the most important investigation we're currently handling. Okay, so you have our commitment, our full commitment. We have our hate crimes unit represented here, Miss April Hargrove. She is the commanding officer of our hate crimes unit. I've known April for
Okay, so this is just, I don't even know what to say. That's just, that's somebody in the chat said something about bowing down to Islam. That's exactly what this is. How many times does the police chief get involved when there's graffiti on a building or a sign? Never. Come on. You would think the police chief has much more important things to do, but no. I'm surprised he's not wearing a Islamic head covering up in here. Full effort, full resources deployed for graffiti. And we also have a similar issue in Boston. Houston PD outreach. I'm not gonna delve too much more deeply into that. It's just, if we're not careful, we're gonna end up like Europe. We're gonna end up like Europe. And I know that was New York, but they are focused, laser focused on Texas. Europe has ignored all of the concerns, and now there's some backlash. We'll see where that leads. Here in the United States, people just dismiss it, bring up non sequiturs like all the evil that was done in the name of Christianity. Maybe we'll get into that and debunk some of that later on. That's just thinking and just ridiculous and means absolutely nothing. People don't want to be accused of being biased. They don't want to be accused of they don't want to be accused of being Islamophobic. And I contend there's no such thing as Islamophobia, because people don't want to get blown up. People don't want to get shot. And that is their MO. So it's completely rational to not want to be involved in any of that. That's not phobia. It's just that's just common sense. All right, let's go ahead and move on because I got a ton of stuff to get to, and I may not get to it all at this point. But I'm going to get into something else that I know a lot of people are not going to like, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments in the comment section about this one too. But we are going to get into some voter fraud. And I know it sounds nuts when you talk about dead people voting, non-citizens voting, mail-in ballot fraud. All of that is, the left will lead you to believe that all of that is of such little significance to render it not even worth talking about. Until you realize that it actually does happen. And the issue isn't whether or not it exists. The issue isn't even whether or not it happens at scale. What matters is how much it actually takes to change an election. In New Jersey, there were a number of non-citizens who were charged for voting in New Jersey elections. Now, there were also some dead people who were removed from the voter rolls, I believe, in North Carolina. 34,000 dead people removed from the voter rolls. There have been proven cases of mail-in ballot fraud, like in Paterson, New Jersey in 2020. There was a 2018 9th Congressional District election fraud scandal. Every time it happens, it's not theory, it's not fringe. It results in charges, investigations, and in some cases, new elections. And I know the left will say that massive voter fraud doesn't happen, and I'm not contending that it does. I'm not going to try and prove that massive voter fraud happens across the country. It's much simpler than that. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take massive voter fraud to swing an election. Every time something like this, every time a voter fraud case happens, it's some of the same pressure points. It's mail-in ballots, it's weak chain of custody, it's self-attestation, it's an honor system failure. It's not sophisticated. It's not hacking voting machines. It's not high tech. It's exploiting the gaps that exist that nobody wants to acknowledge. And there are so many places around the country where ballots get mailed to everyone on the voter rolls. And so people die every day. Those ballots still get mailed out because that data doesn't refresh immediately. So what is stopping anyone from filling out that extra ballot? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Anyone can handle those ballots. And the whole idea of citizenship, that's just verified through a checkbox, if some of these jurisdictions even want to verify it. You hear stories all the time of people who move into a new location, go to present their ID. No, we don't want to see that. What? There have been stories all over the place of exactly that. So if you can vote without showing an ID, How does anyone know whether or not you're eligible to vote? Of course, they don't, and they don't care. You notice the states that Cackling Cammy won. She won those states that didn't have voter ID laws. Just saying. But getting back to the point here, it's not that it has to happen at scale. Elections have been decided by a single vote. Elections have been decided by picking a name out of a jar because it was a tie. 5 votes, 9 votes, 48 votes, 100 votes. It doesn't take a lot. And that's not going back decades. That's since 2015, those examples. So to suggest that it happens at scale or it has to happen at scale to have an impact is just wrong. And it's lazy to think that. Because if you think that, then you don't have to address the issues that actually exist. You think, oh, there's no large scale fraud going on, so we don't have to worry about it. Meanwhile, elections are getting decided by single digit vote counts. And then a year or so later, there's an election fraud case where somebody threw 30 votes, 30 fraudulent votes in the ballot box. It happens. Look it up. All you need is a margin small enough, a handful of changes to change the outcome of an election. And when you have 34,000 dead people voting in a jurisdiction that sends out mail-in ballots to everyone, if you don't believe it happens, then you're just being willfully ignorant, and I can't help you. The media and the left loves to say that these charges are baseless, that election fraud doesn't happen. It's so rare that it's statistically insignificant. And to harp on it is a waste of time. Meanwhile, elections are being decided by single digit votes. Illegal aliens are voting in elections. Illegal aliens are getting driver's licenses in jurisdictions where that's all they need to vote. Election integrity should be, it should be one of those things that everyone agrees on. And if you hear these people in interviews, they claim to agree, but then they don't want to do anything about it. They don't want to do anything about it. The margins can be so slim. You don't need a massive voter fraud ring to accomplish the goal. You just need people to not pay attention. And to just trust that these people are going to follow the rules without any type of verification whatsoever. That's not voter integrity. That's hope. That's wishful thinking. And wishful thinking loses elections. And that's just acknowledging the reality of the situation. And I know reality is something that the left, they're allergic to it. Let's be honest. All right. Thank you all for being in the chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the monitors for holding it down and keeping order in the chat. I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you. I'm just going to move on. Yeah. So recently, the ATF director a new ATF director was confirmed. And there are some people in the 2A community who loved this nominee and think he's going to be a great fit, and others who are slightly more skeptical. And I think I'm on the skeptical side because his background, and we'll get into his background here in a minute, I think. Well, yeah, let's get into his background now. He is a career agent. He started off in the NYPD and then moved over into the, he started off in NYPD. He went to SWAT, I believe, in Florida, a Florida jurisdiction, and then moved on to the ATF, and he's been with the ATF for over 20 years. People who support his nomination and his time as director think that because he spent so much time on the streets actually dealing with criminals, that's his focus, and he understands the Second Amendment community. That may be true, but he's also a very fast climber. He started off with the NYPD, I believe, in '92, and spent a decade plus in NYPD and then in SWAT somewhere else, and then joined the ATF and climbed up to the point where he's the director, the now director. You don't get to that point that quickly without being a bit of a politician. So there's that red flag for me, even though some people say he's not a politician. And I'm not that familiar. This is just what I've read about him. I haven't followed his career. I didn't even hear about him until he became the acting director. But the first thing that he did was, once he was confirmed, the first thing that he did was sign directives to rescind or adjust 34 different rules that the ATF has had in place. And I'm not going to go through all of them, obviously, but there are a few that, if you're familiar with the Second Amendment and what the ATF has been doing of late, there are a few that are going to be of interest. The first one, they have rescinded the stabilizing brace rule, which reverses a Biden era rule, which once it was implemented, made millions of gun owners felons overnight. Overnight, as soon as it went to place, they became felons. Now, the courts eventually struck that down, but they're just now repealing this, rescinding this rule. That's a problem. It's a symbolic rollback, not really a permanent fix because there's an underlying law that's still in place that has to be repealed. So, and again, before we go any further, this is just the framework. The actual language for these rules has not been released yet. What the rumor is that he's going to drop all 34 into the Federal Register at once and then open up public comment. That's also a bit of a red flag for me, because I don't know if you've ever done a public comment on a rule in the Federal Register. It's a process. And if you're going to try and comment on 34 of these rules, people have the attention span of a gnat. People who really want to comment on this and make their voices heard, they're going to have to invest some time. And that tells me that they're not really serious about it, or at least that gives me that idea. So there's that. They're going to rescind, or they're rescinding the engaged in business rule, which pulls back the expanded definition of engaged in the business of selling firearms. This is the rule that got Brian Malinowski here in Arkansas killed a couple of years ago. It targets private sales, and Biden's goal, and I believe he stated this, I believe I just saw a video where he stated this, I didn't save it, where he said that the goal was to implement universal background checks without having to create new legislation. That's what this was about. And so we'll see what the language of that rule change says as well. And then there was the machine gun definition that they rolled back, which is the bump stock rule. What they're going to do allegedly is remove language that of the definition of a machine gun that includes bump stocks. And this was a rule, a decision by the Supreme Court, which held that semi-automatic rifles equipped with bump stocks do not meet the definition of a machine gun under the NFA. So that's good. And there were some other things. They're going to update the 4473, allow for electronic records keeping, which could be good, could be bad. We'll see what the language actually is in that rule. And then record retention limits. Right now, the ATF holds on to 4473s indefinitely. They're changing that to 20 to 30 years, depending on what the language is in the rule. That's still not good, because we know that they already have a registry based on these 4473s that they have. They've been digitized. That is against the law. And now they're going to make it so that these 4473s are electronic and they can be held onto for 20 or 30 years. Which, if a business, FFL goes out of business and they have to send those records to the ATF, ATF could still hang on to those records for 60 years. That could turn out to be worse, but we'll see. So this new ATF director, the jury's still out, in my opinion. On paper, it seems like a good pick. These rules, for people who aren't really paying attention, this 34 rule package, some people, and I've seen people on both sides. I've seen people in the 2A community who I respect on both sides say this is great. Others have a little more cautious approach, which is how I look at it. We'll see. We will see. All right. Let's move on because I want to take a look at this and get into it. A couple of days ago, a United airliner on approach at Newark Airport hit a delivery truck. And this delivery truck was not on the runway like the fire truck a couple months ago. It was on the highway. And that's, not only is that scary, and thankfully the driver and all the passengers survived, but that's not supposed to happen. Let's take a look at this because this is scary. And like I said, it looks scary. The driver survived. He was treated and released from the hospital that day. So it's not, it looks more horrific than it actually is, but let's check this out.
Camera video showing the moment that the wheel of a United Airlines plane slams into a bakery truck. The driver cruising along the New Jersey Turnpike when all of a sudden, there's debris everywhere. United Flight 169 packed with more than 230 people on board flying from Venice, Italy.
Holy oh my goodness.
Flying dangerously close to traffic below at around 2 p.m. Sunday.
So the news story goes on. Why was the plane flying that low on approach? Low enough to actually hit a van on the highway. That's a problem. Now, they haven't released any information yet, so we don't know anything about the pilot, but I would love to know. And it's also kind of telling that they haven't released anything yet. But I would love to know the qualifications and experience of this pilot. Because planes don't just randomly hit vehicles on the highway. That just doesn't happen. Something broke down somewhere. Whether it doesn't seem like it was mechanical. So something somewhere broke down. Maybe it was, well, you know what? I don't even want to speculate because I don't know. I'm not a pilot. I just know I've flown enough to understand that shouldn't happen. And I don't even think you have to fly enough to really, I mean, you just know that shouldn't happen. But this is another indication of, or at least it should spark some questions about the pilot, the skill of the pilot, the experience of the pilot. After all of the years of DEI focused hiring for pilots and airlines, that's exactly what this conjures up. Now, this is all speculation, obviously. They haven't released anything, so we don't know anything about this pilot yet. But when you look at the totality of the circumstances, that has got to be a question in your mind. It's got to be. If it's not, you're not paying attention. So even though we don't know, it is fair to ask, and you'd be irresponsible if you didn't ask, what was going on with the training and experience of this pilot. Because you don't get diversity points for 150 miles on approach. You either have precision or you have problems. And obviously in this particular case, there was a problem. Now, maybe there's faulty instruments, maybe something, and again, I'm not a pilot, so I don't know if the air traffic control could have had a role in it. I don't know. But what I do know is that this driver is extremely blessed to survive that. Extremely blessed. And so are all the passengers on board, because that could have gone horrifically bad. Horrifically bad. So once we get more facts, we'll tighten up the reporting on this. But it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Really interesting. All right. I got a couple of really stupid people I want to show you. And there's a ton to choose from. One of them is the mayor of Seattle. And this woman, she's like a dumber and less likable version of Mamdani in New York. And that's saying a lot, because he is extremely unlikable for a whole host of reasons. But what you're going to see is a video of a couple of thugs beating up on an old man, and the mayor arguing against the tool used to catch these thugs. Check this out.
This is legislation that will expand CCTV cameras, that could potentially be taken control of by the Trump administration. And this is legislation that was opposed by immigrants' rights groups, by civil liberties groups, and by the member of color caucus in the legislature. And I'll quote from their letter. This technology, and technology similar to it, has recently been in the news for its failure.
Now, this man right here that was just beaten up by these two thugs, 77 years old, getting off the bus, minding his business. And these thugs beat him up and rob him. And this happened over a week ago, and he's still in the hospital. And she's arguing against CCTV footage that helped identify these thugs.
Failure to be meaningfully and consistently secured, leading to breaches that could result in sensitive data being.
And here's another thing that bothers me to no end about this. This dude right here just sat and watched the whole thing. Wow. That's not a man right there. There were two of them, yeah, but so what? You get in there and you do what you got to do. And if you end up taking a beating, okay, but at least you did it trying to protect an old man. What is that? What? Anyway.
Shared by ICE and putting our immigrant and refugee communities at risk. This is
So they want to protect, she wants to protect the immigrant and the refugee communities at the expense of an old man. And it gets better. It actually gets better, if you can believe it. Because this is body cam video of them arresting one of the thugs, and listen to what he has to say.
I work for the state. You work for the state? You know Katie? Yeah. Yeah, I know Katie. The mayor. Yeah. Thank you. That's it. That's all I'm saying. That's my last word. Is there camera? Yeah. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say right there. No, you're being audio and video recorded, just so you know, man.
He knows, or at least he believes, that nothing's going to happen because the mayor has his back. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. These people are terrible. These people are just, how they get elected to these offices is mind-boggling to me. And I know the one of the biggest reasons is that Republicans don't exercise their right to vote the way they should. Republicans who stay home elect Democrats. And Republicans who stay home and elect Democrats get people like this Seattle mayor, like Mamdani, like Mayor Mohawk in Chicago, like Governor Newsom in California, like J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. When you don't vote, that's what you get. And if you didn't vote and you live in those jurisdictions, your complaint is really going to fall on deaf ears right on through here. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, folks, you have been watching the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network. I am Big E, and you can catch me every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Saturdays now at 8 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern. And you can also catch my good friend Sackhead Sean on the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense, every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. BZ and the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday, which means he will be on tonight. He has a banger show lined up, so be sure to check him out every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. And Lyle Armstrong every Friday and Saturday with Beer and Bullstein on Saturdays, Fridays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. Please like and subscribe and share all of those great shows and continue to pray for us that we break through. We are closing in on 1,500 subscribers for on SHR, and my individual channel, Mission Ready Men, is closing in on 1,000. So please be sure to like and subscribe and share all of the content that we have on the channel. All right. You can't turn, just to close us out here, you can't turn Nazi into a weapon and then ignore it when it's inconvenient. Because at that point, It's not a warning. It's not rhetoric. It's just noise. And people are starting to notice. And hopefully enough people start to notice that we turn this madness around. All right, that's it for the briefing. We are not just here to yammer for 90 minutes. We're here to equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. If anything that we said here matters to you, don't just watch, but again, as I said, share it. Bring another man into this battle. If you want to wear what you stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, hit Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of our great designs about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And while you're there, hit the 7 Armors shop and check out all of the t-shirts from all the shows that we just talked about and all of the gear that we have there as well. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.